We're going to move on to our next speaker who wins the farthest away contest today and by far the latest at night. So I'd like to introduce Hieu Tran.
Hi everyone, thank you for being here. It's my pleasure to be a speaker in MITRE ATT&CK Power Hours. So my name is Hieu Tran, and right now I'm working for FPT Cyber Security Divisions. I have been working for FPT for more than 4 years, and my major responsibility is threat detection engineering and incident responder. So my presentations can be divided into 5 parts. The first one is the threat detection and the threat hunting. What is the difference between two of them? The next is how about the threat hunting methodology and how we can use and leveraging MITRE ATT&CK frameworks to be a common language for everyone, every threat hunters. Then last but not least is the case studies. For one of our customers in the last years, we have to do threat hunting and incident response service for them, and key takeaway for these presentations. So let's come to the first part. I think everyone in this meeting know about the threat hunting. It's the human driven with the support of technology to find the best thing happen in your organizations. So what is the difference between the threat detection and threat hunting? What is the main difference? Let's take a look at the threat detections. People may know about threat detection like some kind of reactive approaches. People can buy some automating technology such as CM, intrusion detection system, IDS, IPS, antivirus, or etc. and etc. Basically, the threat detection is using the automation tool with some rules and static to warning us about some bad thing happen. And the main benefit of this kind of approach is the least expensive to the other ones. In the contrast is the threat hunting. In threat hunting is human driven with the proactive human try to find the best stuff happen in our organizations. And you can see that the threat hunting can help us to identify the detection graph when we try to do threat detection, and may help us to create new detection contents. That should be enable the threat detection engineer and enable our threat hunters. But in the main disadvantage of this threat hunting approach is we need the security experts for hunting, for searching, for leveraging our tools, and it's quite slow and expensive. So in the threat hunting and threat detection, in the last 3 years, we already know about so much about thanks to MITRE. We know so much about the TTP technique and procedures. Like threat detection, threat hunting also looking for the touch of the campaigns. We're looking for tactic, technique, and procedures. Sometimes we may looking for the adversary tools or network host artifact, but normally we only looking for the tactic, technique, and procedures. I like to share the next slide because I always tell my teammates that number tell its own stories. And let's take a look at the number, the dwell time of how could we detect and how long does it take to detect an attacker in our organizations. You can see that in 2019, it takes almost 30 days to detect some guys hacking our system, exfiltration some data out of our organization. So it's too long, and it takes too long to detect the bad guys in our organizations. I have read some Twitter from very great article from Microsoft when they try to dispatch an honeypot on the internet. It's only take the attacker for almost 3 hours from the beginning. They can remote in that honeypot. They can exfiltration all the data out, and finally they can destruction by deploy some ransomware in that honeypot. Only 3 hours. So in 30 days, who know what can be happen to our organization, right? For the threat hunting methodology, I think people nowadays get a lot of things to talk about threat hunting, but I love to talk about its methodology. Basically, the threat hunting will go into 4 phases, and the most important phase, in my opinion, is the how could we creating our hypothesis. And if you look at the cycle, the next phase is the based on our hypothesis, we can investigation using tools, using different kind of approaching to investigate, to analyze the data, and we might uncover new technique or processes, or uncover new patterns that the threat detection might miss. From that, we can inform and enrich our threat detection program, or we can develop some like threat hunting procedures. And this might be great for our team, both threat hunter and both threat detection engineers. I must have a big thanks and a thumbs up for MITRE ATT&CK Framework, because in the last 3 years, we use it like a common language for all our teams. And I think we can believe that MITRE will become a common language for all the threat hunters all around the world. When talking to MITRE, I always talk about the Powershell, because in almost 4 years, I have been tracking and I have seen that most of our incidents occur when the adversary leveraging the Powershell technique. Different adversary have different style when they using the tools and using the techniques. So FPT-32 may use the PowerShell very different from the FIN6 or the FIN7. So MITRE ATT&CK Framework provides us a huge knowledge base about how the adversary can leverage that technique, how can they use to attack our system. And that is make a lot of sense for any threat hunter or any threat detection engineers. So I want to talk about a little bit about my case study last year when our team comes on and do the incident response and threat hunting for one of our customer in Vietnam. I think it's a pretty large customer in Vietnam. So about the customer situation at that time is the large enterprise with huge number of endpoints, maybe 7,000 or more than 7,000, with around 1,000 servers and 6,000 workstations. Just, I think it's very large at that time. And when we come in and do the first assessment, we know that we recognize that all the core service, including Active Directory email servers, they use Exchange email servers for on-premise, antivirus management servers already compromised. So this really quite crazy. So I think quite crazy because the antivirus management servers have been compromised from 2015. And we also found that all the technical operation and security staff team machines are already compromised. And when we analyze the malwares and analyze the pattern, we uncover that the adversary we are fighting with is the FPT-32, very well-known adversary, and known as Ocean Lotus, the cyber espionage, the state sponsors group, almost targeting some organization in Vietnam for intelligence. So we think that this guy very a mess, and it is chaos when we come and fight with FPT-32s. So how can MITRE ATT&CK Framework help our team in these situations? So before talk about how we leveraging the MITRE ATT&CK Framework, I want to say thank you to MITRE and thank you to Nika. He tracking the FPT-32 very closely, and in one of his tweet, I found that the FPT-32 in the past already leveraging the McAfee orchestrator to deliver and abuse the malwares. So unfortunately, our customer also use the McAfee orchestrator. So it's really crazy and it's quite stupid. Yes. So let's talk about our hypothesis. Like I mentioned before, the most important thing the most important part in the threat hunting with me is the how could we build the hypothesis. Based on MITRE, and based on our experience almost more than 3 years fighting with Ocean Lotus, we believe that they can gain initial access by using spear phishing to gather the valid account, and maybe it's the privileged account, some like root account or administrator account. At that time, APT32 leveraging the living of the land binary techniques to do the execution of malicious payloads such as the CMD.exe, leveraging the Powershell or MITRE, just like Kathy mentioned before. They always try to install some two different persistent technique by installing some new service or registry run key to maintain their access to the host, and try to stay under the radar by using software packing, DLL hijacking, and file deletion, log deletion maybe. The last but not least in our hypothesis is how can they communicate with the command and control servers. So based on the first assessment and based on our experience, we think we think that the C2 communication can be done, should be done, use common use port like HTTP port 80, HTTPS or DNS. So this is when we try mapping to the MITRE ATT&CK navigators, our hypothesis could be look like this. And you can see that our hypothesis do not pointing out how can APT32 collect the data and how could they impact the organizations, because we do not have enough data. So let's come and take a look at how we find and how the result from the threat hunting and incident response process. Uh, Before talking about our result, I want to share this gift. I think if any threat hunter fighting with have a chance fighting with APT32 will know this meaning. If you don't know, so pull out a list of Pokemons, checking all about the service or new registry run key. Maybe you will find some evidence of APT32s, because in the last 4 years, APT32 like to leveraging Cobalt Strike, creating the payload or malware with the Pokemon names, and in the Twitter of Nika, he also share a threat hunting tip for hunting the Pokemon malicious service, and this is very interesting. So I also talk with my team. So let's get them all. Let's get them all. When we coming in, because we know that all the core service already compromised, so we try to deploy our independent hunting stack, including the endpoint detection for covering all the endpoint and covering more than 7,000 endpoints. Customer also have a CM, but we also try to deploy our own data lake for gather all essential service such as DNS proxies, Active Directory authentication log, because their CM is quite slow and could not enable our threat hunter to do their job. We also try to find the best stuff in the network by deploying the advanced threat detections, Microsoft Advanced Threat Analytics to detect any kind of suspicious or malicious payload attacking to the Active Directories. The network detection and response, we try to integrating with some threat intelligence feeds and our own sandbox for analyzing any malicious files or malicious payload found in the network. Our team try to leveraging the open API of all the stack we deploy in to automate lots of our work, and we try to quickly deploy data acquisition script across the enterprise infrastructure. It means more than 1,000 server and 6,000 workstation. We automating the prevention of active communication to the command control servers by endpoint isolations and binary isolation. And finally, we're speeding up the cleaning malware in the remediation process by removing binary files, executable files, or any malicious service and registry run key. So at the end of the day, we discover many bad things happen, and we discover more than we discover 30 C2 domains and 12 C2 IPs. In that, we have found that more 4 C2 domains have never seen before. That means this domain is created for this campaign targeted in our customer. A lot of servers, a lot of client workstations were compromised. Multiple malware artifacts we try to divide into different groups, such as binary files, including .exe, executable file, or dynamic link library files, some scripting, Powershell script, C# script, JS, .NET, many things else, and I could not include in this slide. Web shell. Some public servers, some public web application already been compromised by uploading some web shells, and it's now always a PHP script, and a lot of C2 payload we found in the registry and the malicious service APT32 used for persistent and executions.
That sounds like a lot of work. So I think we're running on time here, but thank you for sharing. This has been amazing. And I think the big question I had for you was, you mentioned the difference between threat detection and threat hunting. What is your kind of, any advice you can share with the community in terms of how do you get those teams to work together? It's like you said, it's getting ahead of the adversary versus, responding to what happens. And what advice can you share there?
So in our organization, to have the both team working with each other, we use the some guy like train their roles. Like we have 4 months working as threat detection. The next 3 months they can work as threat hunters to gain another perspective of another team, and they can share their result from their work to see the result, and then help each other to gain knowledge about the other phase. So I think this kind of approach can leverage both of threat detection and threat hunters.
Makes a lot of sense. So thank you so much for sharing. I mean, we know it's really late there, so we definitely appreciate you staying up to be with us. So definitely hang around. I know hopefully you're not too tired, but we got some questions in Slack, so pop over there. But thanks again for sharing.